So we'll get started on the next talk. Before I jump into that, we have the Outerz0ne 9 T-shirts. Not all of them are smalls, I swear. We got a few smalls for the. That's extra large. Yeah. This is Windows administrator size. Joey and I wear Unix admin size. So.
That's large. El Grande.
El Grande. They say, what size shirt do you wear? I said, G. You know, what's G? Gorilla. So the tradition with with Outerz0ne is we'll have a piece of foam core up in a little while. If you go by, it has boxes on it. You sign your handle or your name or whatever you want to put on there. Some people actually, Jigsaw draws her logo every year. Scott Moulton appears to sign everything, his name, his handle. I think there's a social security number in there.
He's kind of a big deal.
He's kind of a big deal. If you haven't met Scott, Scott's kind of a big deal. Ask him to tell you that story too. So what we have is everyone from the previous year's con signs the foam core. A couple of weeks before the con, I throw it on the table saw and rip it into sections and scan all of them, and they all get put on the back of the T-shirt. So if you were here last year and you signed it, your name is on the shirt. So we have those on sale. They're in the registration area. They're one of the things that actually helps pay for the conference. So if you would go take a look at them, I'd appreciate it. We've got some different contests. We always like to have some real low-budget fun, like we've got a Lego contest. We have some of these things I can't believe I'm saying out loud. We've got like Play-Doh modeling clay. You can play with that, come up with a cool, yeah, here you go. He's, all right! I never got to play with the clay in kindergarten, man. I'm going to play with the clay today. Fuck yeah. Yeah, I hope they make it taste better. At least as good as the paste, right? You know, the paste was really good.
Don't make bricks out of it.
Don't make bricks out of it? Whoops.
Pack it with your raspberry.
Apparently, this is a drug-induced story or something I'm going to have to hear later because it doesn't make no sense. All I'm getting is clicking, man. We have that. We have stuff to bling your badge out with. Just kind of goofy stuff. We left the back of it blank, so you could put. I have the Ace Hackware sticker on the back of mine, but yeah. And we have Taylor with Ace Hackware has got some stuff in the other room. You brought stuff to sell?
I didn't bring out more stuff to sell. I'm gonna create an Outerz0ne coupon code for anybody that wants stuff. So I'll come up with a coupon code when we take a break here next opportunity. And there's basically just a few nicks and knacks to play with over on the table there. There's a variety of locks, and I've got some big set out.
Sweet.
Clear practice locks and some master locks. It is by no means a lockpick village. It's more of a
lockpick table.
Table of despair.
Table of despair.
But there's stuff to play with. You can kind of see some of the things we have on the site.
Very cool. Thanks for bringing that out. And yeah, if you can get the code, we'll get it up and tweet it out. Well, I guess we can't tweet it out. That would screw up everything. But hey, guess what? There's a discount code. So yeah, we've got Ace Hackware's got their table with locks and fun toys in the back. Ski Boy had some stuff that he purchased. It's all Japanese stuff that he had got to sell at SkyDogCon last year, and no one bought. So he's got a table back there. So walk by and smack him in the back of the head if you don't mind, and say hello. Tell him I said hi. So we got stuff like that. We're who here is a Twitterer? Okay. You don't have to. Yeah. You don't have to admit in front of your friends, but our hashtag or our Twitter account is Outerz0ne, Outerz0ne. Some of the stuff for the contest, if you have something you've made, you can snap a picture and put it up on Twitter and hashtag us or put our Twitter in it, and that's how we'll actually know what you've done, so keep that in mind. And outside of that, I'm going to shut the hell up, which everyone should be applauding right now. Lunch theoretically is noon. We're running a little bit behind, but nothing too major. So we're going to try to get everything rolling as soon as we can after lunch to try to bring things back a little bit. But Ben Halfjack has been absolutely wonderful and doesn't mind us screwing the time schedule up completely. He's going to say something to me later on about it, but right now he's going to be nice and amenable to it. So we have Halfjack with Geeks Guide to a Healthy Lifestyle. This is more than the 3-2-1 rule, right?
Right.
Does everybody know the 3-2-1 rule? Who doesn't know the 3-2-1 rule? All right. 3 hours of sleep, 2 meals a day, 1 shower. If you live by that, you can make it at a con, definitely. So, all right. Thanks, guys. We appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Sky Dog. Am I live? Am I live? Okay. All right, so rather than go into a long explanation of what the singularity is, in case you folks don't know, I'm going to see if I can get Sheldon Cooper to help explain it for us. So, all right. So I'm going to hold it down here since we don't have good tie into that.
What I'm doing here is trying to determine when I'm going to die.
A lot of people are working on that research. So what is all this?
My family history, factoring in longevity, propensity for disease, etc.
Interesting. Cause of death for Uncle Carl was KBB. What's KBB?
Killed by badger.
How's that?
It was Thanksgiving. Uncle Carl said, "I think there's a badger living in our chimney. Hand me that flashlight." Those were the last words he ever spoke to us.
I don't think you need to worry about death by badgers being hereditary.
Not true. The fight or flight instinct is coded genetically. Instead of fleeing, he chose to fight barehanded against a brawny member of the weasel family. Who's to say that I don't share that flawed DNA?
Well, you can always get a badger and find out.
But seriously, even if I disregard the Uncle Carl factor, at best I have 60 years left.
How long, huh?
60 only takes me to here. I need to get to here.
What's there?
The earliest estimate of the singularity, when man will be able to transfer his consciousness into machines and achieve immortality.
So you're upset about missing out on becoming some sort of freakish, self-aware robot?
By this much.
So the singularity was proposed by Ray Kurzweil a while back. He's, many people probably know his name. He's done a lot of technology and was very, very much in the early days. He struggles to do that. He takes about 200 supplement pills a day, tries to live all, the same stuff. So, but I'm not sure that's a good path, as you'll see in my particular take. Okay, so a lot of times the question is asked, hey, I don't want to live forever because you'll be old and sick and decrepit and it'll suck. Okay, but actually that's not too much true. Most of the diseases that we associate with old age are from a lifetime of not doing the right thing, rather than a lifetime of being alive. Okay, so if we if we sort of take care of our bodies, work with them in the way that they're built to work with, you can be that 90-year-old person that still goes out and chases down cows and all that, and then die suddenly from an aneurysm in 20 minutes, and won't spend the rest last 10 years of your life in bed in a hospital or something. So it is possible, but lifestyle choices have a huge impact on that. Okay, so here's the problem. Evolutionarily speaking, we are screwed because we don't live in the world that our bodies evolved in. Okay, so for the last couple 100,000 years, up to a couple of 100 years ago, we lived in small, mostly clan type of groups. We were struggling to find something to eat, so we were very, very active. Stress was acute. I'm worried about that, this large beast I'm going to kill and eat might kill and eat me first. So very, very direct stress, largely under our control. Okay, we ate anything that came along, grubs, leaves, berries, roots, tubers, nuts. animals, anything that we could sort of, get a hold of and wouldn't get us first. And we had very little access to concentrated sugars, except for fruit, which has a little fiber, which really, really helps balance it out. And the fat we got pretty much was, from animals, and, we were eating the meat and all that sort of stuff. So today, we live largely individualistic lives. We have limited social interaction, except now by technology, which we're not quite sure is the same. We're plagued by not stress we can do stuff about, but intellectual stress. Okay, the boss is on our case, and we can't either kill him or run away from him. So we just sort of sit there and stew a while. Yeah. So we make a living and we find our entertainment by sitting in front of a screen. We are inside under artificial lights, like we are today. We consume highly processed food that's salty, fatty, has lots of sugar in it, because that makes lots of money for the companies that sell those foods. Okay? And we wash that stuff down with caffeinated sugary drinks. So, yeah, like I said, this is to one degree or another, this is the modern life. I would say it's maybe the ultimate achievement of the geek life, is that's what we do. Okay? So, like I said, evolutionarily, we're screwed because we're not built to live the way that we're mostly living now. Okay? But there is hope. We can make Smallish. Now, I say Smallish because some of these do require a fairly significant sort of change in how we do stuff. But if we do that, we greatly improve our health and our longevity. Okay? So let's look at it. Okay? So what we need to do is rtfm the manual for our bodies. That is, think about how evolution built us to work, and then try to do stuff that sort of lines up with our operating parameters. Okay? That involves several areas: activity, diet, sleep, stress, social interactions. Okay? Now, this, as you may recognize, is the cell introduced in your, what, 5th grade, 3rd grade biology class, okay? The college, okay? All right, that is a load of crap, okay? That makes it seem like that our cells are small, little, discrete component elements, sort of, like the idealized description of network traffic or something like that, okay? And it's not. They are incredibly complicated, sharpened over 4 billion evolution micro machines. Right? So think more about looking at the picture of, a CPU die rather than, thinking about CPU and data traveling in and out of it, the graphics that you see in your computer classes. All right? So we like I said, really complex systems, highly interactive, they've got a lot of self-feedback loops and stuff in there, and just thinking about it as, okay, I got the mitochondria over here and I got the nucleus over there, just doesn't even, come close to what's really going on there. Right? So, I liken this sort of to software. You go to a web page, it's got a form, you type in stuff. Okay? Well, that's a pretty simple representation of output on that. But think about, many people in here are programmers know enough. Think about the code that goes behind that. Okay? It's not simple, it's complex. It has to do things. A lot of places where something can muck up the work, trying to protect against, server-side or SQL insertion attacks, stuff like that. So, really complex stuff. And you think, well, gosh, how can I ever understand that and deal with it? Well, it's not that hard, because just as we have to just, plug in our name and credit card number to the website and, we get our stuff shipped from Amazon, no problems there. The operation can be fairly simple as long as we sort of be sure to put the right stuff in the forms. Right? So, the question is, how do we figure out what it is we need to do? How do we know how to live? Okay? Well, one way to do, or one way to not do it, is listen to stuff you hear in the news. Okay? So, 3 types of lies. Some people may know this quote. Okay? Lies, damn lies, and statistics. Famously attributed to Mark Twain, he actually attributed it to Disraeli, although there's no evidence, written evidence that Disraeli ever said it. But it was sort of a phrase going around, and he took possession of it. Okay? So what we have is that all sorts of scientific research is being done on metabolism, body health, all this kind of stuff. And they all get reported, and they're almost always reported shallowly and probably incorrect, all right? So they tell us the big numbers, but they don't tell us, what's all the subtleties of, qualifications, when this happens, all that kind of stuff. So January 3rd this year, you may recognize some of these. Overweight people live longer. Okay? A little extra fat may help you. Okay? Overweight people have lower death rates. Okay? So, yeah.
Overweight people overeat later.
Yeah, so like I said, this was actually a meta-analysis study, which means they took like 216 studies of people that actually went out and did work, measured body fat and tracked people for 10 years and all this kind of stuff. And it was severely flawed. Plus, it didn't reach the conclusion that the news reported that it met. Okay, so they didn't fail to distinguish between smokers, severely ill cancer patients, people who were smokers traditionally are slightly lighter or slightly have lower body weight than non-smokers. People like cancer and AIDS patients who are not, they're not dying because they're thin because they're dying, which sort of counteracts that thin is good, or that thin is bad for you. The extremely elderly folks, which, as you say, people say that a lot of times tend to waste away as they get in the extreme age, and so they're thin and then they die. Okay? And then the regular folks, there's no distinction between any of these categories. And so the fact that, thin people who have AIDS die doesn't really impact the same, a regular person, normal, healthy person walking around, are they better off thinner or with 10 extra pounds on them or 40 extra pounds on them or, whatever. Okay? So that kind of thing, we just can't really trust those statistics in anyway. Okay? So all of this mix of data, if you look at the overall numbers, it pushed up mortality a little bit compared to people who were slightly overweight and regular weight. But, if the way the numbers look, just a little bit past overweight into the obese category, the number of, mortality shot way up again. So bad data, bad study, and this is typical of news reports. Okay? So, just my fuss against the media. When we start looking at trying to live good and healthy, one of the things we have to be careful of is inflammation. And like I said, this is sort of a root cause of a lot of our problems. Okay? So, again, that complexity, the inflammation cascade is a complex series of biochemical operations that when we damage tissue, we're stung by a bee, we're cut, we overexert a muscle and tear some of the muscle fibers. All of this stuff, get an infection, all of this stuff causes chemical reactions in the body that marshal the body's defenses to come in and attack the bacterial invader, rebuild our muscle, repair a cut or something like that. So it's good, okay? But chronic inflammation is very, very bad, okay? And we get chronic inflammation from a lot of sources. But when we do have it, autoimmune diseases like asthma, arthritis, diabetes, especially heart disease, clogging of the arteries, inflammation of the arteries, which is caused by everything from high blood pressure to high glucose levels to chemicals that we eat, is the main killer of people right there. Okay, most people die of heart attacks, right? So having clear arteries is what we want, and inflammation makes them clog up. Okay? Can't say for sure. There's some evidence that cancer is sort of linked to that. Although inflammation also, like I said, depresses the immune system, and the immune system is key in fighting cancer, so it's hard to work it out. Like I said, it's complex. Right? So what happens with that inflammation is that we got lots of sources. And stress is one of our sources. And again, to understand the complexities, we sort of need to look at what happens when we get stressed. Okay? So everybody's heard of the fight or flight reflex. Sheldon said, yep, it's, how much of one we've got is genetically coded. Also actually tied a lot to our environment. That is, certain types of environmental factors when we're young greatly influence our response to fight or flight situations. And, basically people who've had bad childhoods are sort of on a hair trigger as far as this, and that leads to lots of problems, drug abuse, mental illness, poor relationships, lots of things like that. Okay? But, if you see a tiger jumping out of the bushes at you, you need some adrenaline to kick in and, make blood pool to the center so that we can distribute oxygen from our lungs and get powered up, run like hell, or grab a stick and beat it, or something like that. Okay? So sharpens our senses, really sort of gets our minds as well as our bodies in a hyper state. Okay? So that's good. It can save your life. Okay? However, that chronic stress, boss problems, traffic problems, waiting, in line at the DMV, all of these, first world problem types of issues, they do the same thing. They cause the release of some chemicals from the adrenal gland that are, getting us set to fight something, but there's nothing there that we can fight, or there's nothing there to fight, at all. So this cortisol chemical, which is, shown there, this is this is the stress hormone. And having it running around in our blood system all the time is really, really bad for us. Okay, and it basically, like I said, when we're in hyperdrive, we ignore regular maintenance. So our glucose fat metabolism is messed up. Calcium is pulled out for use in neural transmissions rather than put into our bones. We're not thinking about sex while we're trying to survive. So decreases libido. Okay. So especially in women, I'll put it that way. So this is typically why the higher education a woman has, the less times a week she has sex, because she has a stressful job, and that decreases her libido. Having this flowing around in our body leads to inflammation, especially the arteries. Okay, and of course, leads to mental health. We got a $1 billion industry of antidepressants and mood enhancers and Xanax and all that kind of stuff. Okay? So, but what are we going to do about all these problems? Well, let's start thinking with diet first. Okay, which of these things do you think is probably the healthiest thing to put in your mouth? Black coffee, right. Bacon is number 2, I would put, okay. Orange juice actually is not good at that. Orange juice, fantastic for you. Orange juice, not so good, okay. It's a high sugar drink. It's like drinking a Coke just about. It's got vitamin C, sure, and not enough really to sort of counterbalance that sugar boost that gets you, okay. And of course, wheat bread, well, if it's wheat bread that you made with whole wheat, it would be probably up there number 2 or 3. However, wheat bread that you buy in the store is brown white bread, okay, which leads me to a couple of points that we'll be seeing later on. Okay? So, chicken Alfredo, of course, the fat and the pasta, especially on it. Okay? So, but yeah, as I told Ziploc this morning, is eat the bacon, leave the biscuit, wash it down with coffee. Right? So. Like I said, the black coffee is packed with a photochemical called flavonoids. There's a whole class of these. We get them lots of places: berries, beans, nuts, vegetables. Dark chocolate is a great source of flavonoids. So, I would think that basically if you had coffee-soaked bacon that's dipped in dark chocolate, it would be the perfect food. Okay? On a stick. On a stick.
They have chocolate bacon.
They have chocolate bacon. It's quite good. They ate some at Freaknik last year. All right. So, we're technology people. We fix things with technology. So can't we just take a pill to fix all this? And we do. And, you know, the pharmaceutical companies love to have pills to do stuff, okay? Statins, you know, antidepressants, you know, all kinds of high blood pressure medicine, stuff like that. They make a fortune on that. But that it really is treating sort of treating the symptoms and leaving the cause there to continue profits into the next 40 years. Okay? So what should we think about eating as far as doing our diet? Well, Michael Pollan's a plant person, which I always thought was sort of funny since his last name's Pollan. And he's written several books. He wrote an excellent book about plants that we have changed and have changed us, including apples, marijuana, and potatoes, was it? I couldn't remember the third one, but those, you know, 3 plants that really had a huge impact on them, and other books about food, food chain and stuff like that. So his advice is surprisingly enough to eat food. Okay? Yeah, but so much, I didn't have a chance, or couldn't find it actually. There's a great Get Fuzzy cartoon about how Satchel the dog is describing that, you know, while 62% of the stuff in the apartment is edible, only 18% is food. And, you know, things like the remote control and the carpet were in his list. And that's a situation we find ourselves in. As much of the stuff we eat is not really food. If it's got, you know, more came from a factory than a farm, it's probably not, you know, deserving to be classified as food. Twinkies, you know, processed bread, frozen meals, all that kind of stuff. If it's been processed, it's lost most of its foodness. Okay. Now, the reason it's in the grocery store is it's really, really, really profitable to make. Okay, you know, you take a bag of corn out of the, you know, frozen food section, and, you know, it's what, 99 cents on sale. Well, half of that corn goes into the $3.95 bag of corn chips that you're buying. So they're making lots of money by processing and then selling the processed thing at a higher price. Okay? So what we got to do is try to eat food. Like I said, avoid stuff that's processed. So vegetables, meat, beans, all these kind of things that basically are, you know, they came off the tree, out of the ground, whatever. That stuff that hasn't been messed with, hasn't had the good stuff taken out of it, and a tenth of what they took out put back in so they could label it as fortified, that's the kind of stuff we want to eat. Okay?
A few years ago, I did a per unit price comparison between an ounce of potato chips and an ounce of potatoes. Mm-hmm. And I forget what it was, but it was something like 40 to 1.
Yeah. And it's staggering. And like I said, the potato is not that bad for you, and the potato chip is not that good for you. And, you know, the potato chip is a lot tastier. So, yeah. So, see, that's the thing, is we've got to we first need to sort of tone down our taste buds, sort of get them used to more natural flavors rather than this just bang of salt, oil, and, you know, the starches. So, well, like I said, Doritos, you know, I got a 6-pack, but it's covered by a bag of Doritos. So, you know, it doesn't do any good to impress women with. So, not too much, which of course is, if we're going to eat, we, you know, need to cut down on calories probably, and mostly plants, because those things like that we mentioned, flavonoids, okay, the chemicals that are anti-inflammatory, antioxidants, and all these categories, all of those sort of things we find in high concentrations in all types of plants. Okay, so now based upon this and other information that I've been talking about, process, I think Skydog hates us and is trying to kill us, because if you open up your bag, this, or possibly the pen, is probably the healthiest thing in there as far as avoiding the stuff that we're going to try to avoid.
Unless you put alcohol in it.
I've got one of the matrix on that there. There you go. Yes, sir.
What are the nutrition information on that pen?
That's right. It's got minerals in it. There you go. Minerals. Okay. So if you note, the stuff that we're talking about, the Michael Pollan and other people we're talking about, is the pre-industrial diet. That is, before we developed machinery that would grind grain and throw away. We had to throw away from grain, throw away the parts that are good because they have oil in it, and that spoils. So it's all part of an industrial process that makes, a product that is easily shipped and sold and, distributed, but not healthy. So the same thing, it's like the tomato. Everybody knows, the tomatoes. Basically, they're picked green, especially in our area. They're hardest, softballs, and they pump ethylene gas on them to try to get them red so that they can sell them in the grocery store. You cut them off; they're still green in the middle. They're tasteless because shipping, times and needs and distance and putting them in packing trucks and stuff like that. They need a hard tomato. They don't need a tasty tomato. So this happens with everything, with grains. Let's take all the stuff that's good on the grain, grind it up into flour, and then put this in planes and sell stuff. Good job, Christian. So
most of our food travels 1,000 miles to get to the grocery.
Yeah, food travels, most of it, about 1,000 miles, and it's often, what goes through a factory on the way where they take out the good stuff, and that's, there's local food movements, slow food movements, all this kind of stuff, and sort of the core of many of those types of food movements is, let's get some food that was grown locally, didn't have a huge impact on the environment, that tastes good, and is a lot healthier. So, all right. Now, today, we're not like our ancestors. We do not have to worry about starving to death. Okay? Our problem is the opposite thing. So whenever we need to eat, we need to think about, I don't need to fuel up to go sit down and type some code in. Okay? We need to think everything about nutrition. That's right. They said our brain is a tremendous glucose user, but like I said, we could probably eat half of what we eat and still have plenty of fuel. Okay, but nutrition is a different story. Okay, most of the food, like I said, and a lot of these things are going to be, when I go out to buy my food from, McDonald's or wherever, none of the food that you say we need matches the stuff that's on their menu, which again relates back to the industrial processes, the ease of, building and selling stuff. But we need to think as far as, eat for nutrition. Okay? And here's the bad thing. Processed carbs are pretty much the villain in most health-related issues in America today, including heart disease, diabetes, obesity, all those kind of stuff. Okay? Why processed carbs? Why are they evil? Well, as you may have heard, if you've ever listened to a 5-hour energy drink commercial, the sugar crash. Well, the sugar crash happens because when we eat something that's already been pre-chewed and had the fiber taken out of it at a factory, it hits our stomach and pretty much goes straight into the bloodstream, okay? Which is great if we were going to be jumping on the road and running a marathon, okay? But not so great, again, if we're going to plop our butts in a chair and type on the computer or play video game. Okay? So what happens is that when we get too much sugar in our blood, it's very damaging. So the effects of diabetes are awful. Okay? The excess sugar molecules in our blood plug up little capillaries in our eyes and our fingers, leads to amputation, blindness, damaged organs, all kinds of stuff. Okay? So in order to prevent that, our body throws out a bunch of insulin. So we get a big sugar low, we get a big insulin rush. Okay? So the crash comes in is that big load of insulin, far more than our bodies are really designed to carry on because it didn't grow up in an environment where sugar was plentiful, is it sucks out too much. It overcorrects. And now we have low blood glucose, we feel drained, we're hungry, because when you have low blood glucose, that's what you want to do. That sugar is stripped out and put in fat. okay, stored in fat for later use, except it never needs to get used later because we keep dumping some more sugar on it. Okay? If this happens too many times, you get insulin insensitivity, which basically means your body says, oh, that again, I don't have to respond. And this is what's commonly called type 2 or adult onset diabetes, which has exploded in the last 40 years. Okay? It's just, I didn't go check the rates, but it is tremendous. And if you eat the typical American diet and you live longer, you're going to get diabetes. Okay? So, in addition to our insulin, cortisol is released as far as that action response, and that leads to inflammation and all the bad stuff that it does. Okay? So, avoiding that sugar high and then crash is really the key to avoiding disease and losing weight. Like I said, those two things just go hand in hand if we can avoid that sugar bump and drop. Okay? Now, one of the big things for it is fiber. I don't have a recommendation, but if you add fiber to a meal that has a lot of sugar in it, it slows down the absorption. And a lot of times you get both in the same thing. You eat fruit, you eat vegetables. The fruit comes with, the fibers come with both sugars and fiber, and so they sort of work together and you get a long release of glucose. Okay? So, now, in addition to the carbs, okay, fat is the other meal or other substance you may have learned about in your college nutrition class. And fat is good. And Americans have been taught that fat is bad. Okay? And there is very, very little evidence that actually directly ties dietary fat to heart disease, which is what the theory has been for the last 40 years. Okay? Now, trans fats, which thankfully because of the big fuss about them have pretty much gone away from most things. A lot of stuff used to have trans fats, and trans fats were horrible for you. But most places have actually taken, either quietly or loudly taken trans fats out of their products. So they're not as big a thing. You want to watch for them, but you're probably not going to see them in too many places. Okay? So our cell membranes, our neurons, all of the parts of our bodies have fat in them, and we need fat to build those components. So we need fat. Now, the kind that we get, we want to be a little careful about it. Okay? So, protein, carbohydrates, protein, fat. Those are things. Okay? So, the protein is just another fuel source unless we happen to need it to add muscle. Okay? And so, if we are, working out, really trying to, sort of get toned, get fit, bulk up, you might want to increase your protein. And whey protein is, from leftover from cheese manufacturer, is one of the better ones that I've sort of seen as far as being able to be picked up and put in muscle mass. Iron Geek can maybe contradict or contribute to that as far as what proteins are good for building up muscle in recovery from exercise, strength training. Okay? But unless you're doing a lot of that, you don't need a lot of protein. So generally Americans eat too much protein, too much fat, and not enough complex carbs. Okay? So that's what we're looking for in our diet. A balance of complex carbs, good fats, lean protein with fiber mixed in there. Okay? Good fats would include non-saturated fats. Some saturated fats, fine, from meat, pork, and stuff like that. But fat from nuts, fat from other plant sources, canola, olive, stuff like that. Those oils, useful for building cell membranes, neural tissue, making your brain and your skin is made of almost the same stuff. So if you improve the chemicals going into your brain, you actually make your skin look younger and more flexible too. So it's sort of a double win. Okay? Question to me. The only reason I added this slide in is I found that picture and I loved it. So, is meat good or bad? Well, some of it is it's not going to hurt you. Okay. Again, probably don't want a ton of it. Should you eat meal at every meal? Probably not. Okay. A good mix of veggies in one is good. When you do eat it, okay, skip the skinless chicken breast that you're eating because you think it's healthy. that skin has got good fats in it, okay? We need some fat for all that tissue growth. So, fish, protein, really good, very, very lean. Lean beef and pork and other kinds of things. I'm kind of partial to, pasture-raised chicken because it has, that chicken that we're eating picked up a lot more of those flavonoids, phytochemicals, and stuff like that that is helpful for its bodybuilding. And then we're going to eat it. So it collected all of those good things for us, and we're going to eat. And like I said, be sure to eat the skin, with that chicken because we do need that fat for growth. Okay? All right. So here's the recommendations on our diet. Okay? We're looking for variety. Okay? Lots of different types of foods. Typical McDonald's meal, it's got like 3 things on it. It's got the meat, it's got the bun, the wheat and bun, and potatoes and oil. So not much variety there. Okay? So we're looking for color. Colorful vegetables are good, red tuna, all that good stuff. And generally, we're looking for unmessed around withness. That is, it hasn't been through a factory that's processed the hell out of it and left us with stuff that's easily transportable, but sand is very easily transportable, but not good for us. Okay? So if it's made with flour, you probably shouldn't pick it up. Like I said, if you want to lose weight, that's going to be the key thing, is throw out processed grains, wheat, sugar, all that kind of stuff. Okay? Labels, food labels are lies. Like I said, that wheat bread, okay, this, what's my favorite, something that's pure fat, no sugar added. Okay? It's all sugar, no fat.
Natural Cheetos.
Natural Cheetos, right? Natural is an unregulated word, means nothing. Death Cap's mushrooms, natural.
Big bread made with 100% small bread in 1% of the final product.
Yeah, yeah. So, like I said, if you avoid the stuff that's been messed around with, you won't have to try to decipher these food labels. Okay, those diet meals that you find in the frozen food section, they're not really that diet. I mean, some of them, the calories on the diet one is higher than a comparable product that doesn't have diet on the label. Okay, it's diet compared to their regular, 1,500 calorie meal. So, like I said, they'll say it doesn't have any, added sugar when it's full of fat. They'll say, oh, low-fat yogurt. Yeah, very low-fat yogurt, but about as much sugar as a Coke. Okay, so all of the labels are lies, especially on their health benefits.
What about Jenny Craig?
Okay, I'm not really familiar with the food from Jenny Craig, so I have. It's probably if it's processed, I'm sort of doubtful, and it's expensive, as I understand. Yes, sir.
I know this is a good time to mention it, since a lot of geeks are around. Talk about apps and stuff.
Yeah.
Wonderful app, iPhone and Android called Fujicate.
Fujicate.
Got a barcode scanner.
Oh yeah.
Exactly what's really in it.
Right.
It's great, or suggests a better product.
Okay.
It's not really wheat.
Right. Yeah. Like I said, that's bad for you. Okay. Like I said, I would actually, like I said, personally, I'd be a little bit extreme and advocate that if it's got a barcode on it, that's probably a sign it's been messed with. but like I said, in a pinch, that's probably a good thing because it'll definitely avoid some. And a lot of this is that we don't fix our own foods anymore, and ultimately that's what it ties back to it. Okay. So, colorful veggies and greens. Now, you don't have to grow your own, okay? You don't often even, sort of have to heat it up yourself, but a lot of times it will. Stop by the frozen food section, okay? Frozen vegetables are nearly as good as fresh ones. Don't get the cans. Don't get them in the, whatever, the little cardboard box in the freezer section, that's been processed and has noodles with the wheat flour in it. Get the real thing. A bag of broccoli, rip that thing open, throw it in the microwave 5 minutes, sprinkle some cheese and, whatever flavorants on it, or dump half a bottle of tomato sauce on it. Try not to get the one that's packed full of sugar, because again, no added fat to the tomato sauce, but it's half sugar. So we got to watch for those kind of things. The colors in those veggies, by the way, good signs that they got plenty of flavonoids and other, antioxidants in them. Beans are a good source. If you're a starving college student, don't get the ramen noodles, which are all processed flour, but get you a slow cooker for $5 at, Goodwill, and, make a big pot of beans with a chunk of ham in it, okay? Very, very healthy stuff. The beans have all sorts of good chemicals in those. Yeah. Actually, our bodies do sort of adjust after a week or so and don't produce, because our inner flora get sort of realigned, and we don't produce as much gas, but that is sort of a danger. Okay. All right, fruits are wonderful. Blueberries, frozen blueberries, strawberries, stuff like that. Apples, bananas are not really great for us. They don't have much fiber, but if you ate them with something that has fiber, like oatmeal in the morning, bananas are a real good sort of thing. Yep, they got potassium, which is a good, important chemical for proper neural function, and also lowers cholesterol. Nuts are really, really good. Instead of stacking on a bag of potato chips, snack on nuts. Even if you consume too much calories, you're still ahead. Nuts are fairly rich in calories, so we got to watch out for those. But the oils in them, really, a handful of pistachios every day has half the effect that most blood pressure medicines do. Okay? Is that the chemicals in those relax the blood vessels and make your blood pressure go down. Okay? Whole grains. Like I said, you got to search hard if you want to find something that's got processed whole grains. But if you stop by the bulk section of natural food store, pick up some quinoa, boil it for 15 minutes, whole wheat, pressure cooked. You can use these things like you would use rice, brown rice even. But they're very easy, nice little side dish, and you got a ton of fiber in there. All the good oils that are in the germ that they usually take out. Okay. All right, sleep. I'm going to have to pick up the pace here. Okay. Sleep is important, and a lot of people don't get enough sleep because we stay up late playing and do all that. But benefits of sleep are huge. Immune system boost, articular plaque is tied to sleep. Deficit, there's big news lately about the less sleep you get, the more you want to eat. So it's linked to obesity. So, should you get up and work out and lose an hour of sleep, or should you get that hour of sleep? You probably should get that hour of sleep, although you need to rearrange your schedule so you can work out too. Okay? Early death, folks who do swing work, who don't get a regular pattern sleep, significant reduction in lifespan, like 5 years for working the night shift versus day shift. And a lot of people are working the night shift because, of how we stay up. Okay? And it's hard because our bodies, for some weird reason, have a 25-hour circadian rhythm. Okay? 37% of car accidents are caused by drowsy motorists, almost as much as drunk driving, okay, and texting. Daylight savings time, shaving times, okay? Usually I shave in the daytime. 8% shift in traffic accidents. When we jump forward and lose the hour, they go 8%, up 8%. In the fall, when we fall back and we get that extra hour of sleep, they drop by 8% for the week after, okay? It is such a bulletproof correlation that it is really amazing on that. Okay?
Which category of statistic is that?
Damn blind. Yeah. So, being indoors, artificial light sources really sort of wreck our circadian rhythms. And the only thing I think, like I said, this is almost a 25-hour cycle in most people. And I don't think we came from a planet with 25-hour days. I think that in a system that didn't have artificial lighting, it was just handy that it would always be resetting itself to the thing. It would never sort of get too short. It would always sort of reset itself back to 24 when the sun came up. Yes? That's right. You wearing that shirt that says "Do not expose to sunlight"? Yeah. So, because of artificial light, sleeping late, blinds on the windows, our circadians get out. And if our circadian rhythms, which if you don't know, circadian rhythms are the natural body cycles of arousal and depression as far as doing it. And sleep is kind of interesting. Scientists still can't figure out why we sleep. I think maybe it's evolutionary to keep us inactive at night when bigger, meaner things are out. It's, of course, vital for brain function, learning, that kind of stuff, but no. So if you're trying to getting on a schedule for sleep is really important for overall stuff, but I don't know. I think I'm just lost that argument with this crowd. Okay? So, all right, activity. Okay? The benefits of activity are ample, incredibly, again, verified, tied to all these things. So we are active, we have better mood, stress is reduced, we're better at memory, which is sort of a wild one to me. The more you exercise, generally the better your mind works, okay? So, increase in libido, especially in women, it's more pronounced in women. On the body, boosts the immune system, gets the blood pumping, kind of washes out all of the stuff there, chemical reaction on there, weight control, all that good stuff. Okay? So in the brain, when we exercise, we produce chemicals which are called nerve-protecting compounds, including brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which helps build neurons and maintain them. So in high school students, exercise versus not exercise detected about a 4-point IQ change. That is, they've done studies that, okay, we're going to, these people exercise for a year and watch it. So 4 points on your IQ just by, 20 minutes of something doing a day is kind of good. Right? So part of that may be getting better blood flow to the brain, especially for later life, maybe reducing cardiovascular disease, so slowing the blood, plugging up blood flow going into the head and providing things there. So. And one of the interesting things is exercise is produced or is perceived as stress of the body, but after repeated stress, it's like the insulin. After repeated stress, the body sort of calms down, doesn't get too excited about it, so it reduces our cortisol response. And people who exercise are much less responsive to emotional distress than people who aren't. Okay? I've had many doctors tell me that exercise pretty much is the fountain of youth. The more you move, the younger you'll be longer in life. Okay? And of course, burning calories before and after sort of amps up the immune system. So not only do you work out, get a benefit while you're working out, but when you, sit down, your body's still burning a little bit faster. Our body gets strengthened, the whole inflammation response. We get an immune system boost from this. Okay? And it has a huge impact on our cholesterol. Okay? So, walking is fine. If you walk, that's good. Park at the far end of the parking lot and, walk into the store. Don't try to find the one closest to the door. A little bit of that's helpful. 20 to 30 minutes of that, even if it's not in one place, has lots of benefits. Okay? You all should probably do intervals, which, like I said, would make you able to outrun the zombies if we have zombie apocalypse, because we're going to do it. Okay? And the interval training, you can look it up on the internet. Basically, it's a hard stress and then a slow pace, hard stress, low pace. So if you're pedaling, you pedal like hell for 2 minutes, and then you lightly pedal for 3 minutes. Held for 2, light for that. And actually, this burns a lot more calories if you you were to do a medium pace for the same amount of time. So intervals, like I said, our body really, really responds well to that stress of action, and improves oxygen uptake, endurance, and all that kind of stuff. So got a lot of benefits from doing intervals. And strength training. Okay, don't have to be Schwarzenegger, but doing the strength training is really important, especially as you get older. A lot of the effects of losing balance, bone loss, general lack of energy. If you do strength training, they go into nursing homes, they get these people to work out for 3 months, and they see marked improvements in their overall health. So it's easier, of course, to get in the habit when you're young and don't hurt so much after you do it. But regular exercise a good bit. Intervals, to sort of boost your whole metabolism, and strength training. Okay? All right. So looking at diet and exercise, which of course sort of the big ones, a few recommendations. Right? Whenever we're looking, at eating or working out or schedule, try to stack the deck for your success. Okay? If you don't want to eat a lot and you don't want to eat a lot of the right things, don't buy the bag of Doritos. If they're not in the house, you don't want to eat them, okay? You want to try to get more exercise? You know, park at the other end of the parking lot, okay? You know, make a reminder on your calendar to, you know, get up and walk every 25 minutes. Just walk once around the office, get the blood flowing, bump into somebody, get a good idea from them, whatever. So sort of structure your environments to, you know, pump up that. You can make it a game, personal challenge, have a checklist of, hey, every day I'm going to be sure I do these things. If you know, have a thing where you can sort of do, you know, get up and walk around every once in a while, get a pedometer and say, hey, you know, today I'm going to have to put in 5,000 steps, which means, okay, if I want to check off today on my calendar, I'm going to have to get up and walk around every once in a while rather than just sitting there the whole time when I'm writing that program. Okay. A lot of people ask about supplements, you know, should we eat something? Vitamin D is one because we spend so much time inside and because being outside in the sun is maybe not good for us as well. Vitamin D is one that we probably should take. And vitamin D is, again, a deficit here is really, really implicated in development of cancer and several other diseases. So if you don't take any supplements, I would say probably adding a vitamin D would be a pretty good idea. Have a look on the internet for the research there. Yes?
What's your opinion on nootropics?
I think they're a really good marketing program. A lot of the stuff for those, if you eat the regular balanced diet, you probably are going to get some of that stuff, enough of that stuff to sort of do it. The thing with supplements is that it's very hard for the reductionist theory to work out. You know, people who eat a lot of X get this chemical, so if we give somebody a pill with that chemical, it'll be the same thing. And it never is. You know, with antioxidants, with, you know, olive oil, with, you know, almost any of the things we say, oh, you know, there's people who eat a lot of food with this in it, if we just give them a pill for that, it hasn't ever worked out. Okay? There are a few that I think are probably going to be out there. The stuff in grape skins, Resveratrol or whatever, I think there probably is something on those, and 2 or 3 other ones. So hopefully with the research will finally pan out and everybody will agree to what it is. But, you know, the other kind of, you know, bio things like the yogurt that's got active bacteria or whatever, yeah, if you eat, 4 to 8 of those a day, it might regulate your, you know, all the sugar in it sort of counterbalances any benefit of a regular bowel movement that it might give us. So I'm kind of doubtful for most anything that they're really, really marketing for that. Like I said, they don't make a lot of, you know, money when you buy vegetables, but if they can give you some chemical, they can sell it a lot higher. I always recommend folic acid for women because if you are of, you know, getting pregnant age, it's really important to have good amounts of folic acid at the early stages of pregnancy. So that one, there's other benefits of folic acid, but that one is one that I want to do. Okay? Add fiber. If nothing else, if you know, I love pizza. I love pizza. But all of that wheat in there is good. And sometimes I try to make stuff that's pizza-like, lots of tomato sauce, meat, veggies, little crust, okay? But if I eat regular pizza, I'll just, you know, take something with a lot of fiber, either a fiber supplement or some fruit or something like that. And like I said, it does kind of help balance out the best. I can't count on that every meal, but if you add fiber to your diet, it's going to be a benefit. Okay? I didn't get a chance, and I knew I wouldn't have time. Having an active mental and social life, again, because I think our brains are really built for working with other people, and, you know, all of the circuitry in there for facial recognition, emotional recognition, things like that. I think the more interaction we have face-to-face with people, the better. And a hacker group like this, I mean, just coming out to a con, I've talked with a couple of people, and they say, you know, we have this hacker group that meets, you know, every third Thursday, and 30 people come out. Those things are great. Okay, they really, really are. Yeah, well, you can do it at the house if you have a lot of people or stuff like that. But
I left the house today.
You left the house today. That's good. Yeah. That's a chance. Like I said, when we get that full-on video conference, right? Full video conference, and maybe, but I still think we need to have that nonverbal, you know, smell their pheromones kind of communication. And like being outside in nature, it just sort of soothes our brains, you know.
That's it.
I would caution against that.
Okay. So, I got to go here. So control your chronic conditions if you got them. Don't let them slide. Okay. Some type of quiet time activity is really good. Yoga, meditation, just sitting and staring into space rather than tapping on your phone. And smoking, like I said.
Do those together?
Yeah. Smoking is the number one health thing that you could do. If you smoke, the best thing you could do for your whole life is quit smoking. Okay? Average 14 years shorter for smokers. Okay? These are distributed easily among cancer, which most people think smoking is cancer, but heart disease and respiratory conditions like COPD actually contribute to more deaths by smoking than cancer does. Okay? And like I said, if you insist on having something, I would suggest take out something less dangerous than smoking, like heroin. Okay? 0.8% of heroin addicts per year die. Okay, like 45,000, about 4,500 people out of 600,000. Okay, almost all of those are preventable if you won't mix alcohol with your opaques.
So, on the record, are you suggesting that we take heroin?
Well, I'm saying that you want to consider less dangerous options. This could be one that you might want to look at. Okay? I don't see, like, it seems like in 10 years we'd run out of smokers because 9% of smokers every year die. Of course, what happens, is that in the heroin range, it's like the second year you're using heroin, you die because you drank, a bottle of whiskey with it. But the smokers, they're dying after 40 or 10 or 20 or 30 years of smoking, depending on whether they get cancer or would have to die slowly with heart disease. Okay? So the statistics, maybe it'll get somebody's attention. Okay? So, all right, I'm going to finish up on this one. The SDR squared matrix. Sex. Yes, please. No partner needed. Solo's fine. Great stress reducer. Releases all of those good chemicals and hormones that make our body work good. Your heart rate goes up too. That's fine. Okay. Drugs. It depends. Alcohol, some is good. Thins the blood, clears out plaque. All of those things are okay. Yeah, let's say you get a partner. Okay. Other drugs, which, roofies, you could also get partners with, I guess. Especially nicotine, but like I said, the heroin and all those other ones, probably not good for you. Don't want to do those.
Are you officially suggesting roofies?
No. But I am officially suggesting sex. Like I said, solo with a partner, with partners. I'm not going to judge, but yeah, it's good for you. Rock and roll, it's great as long as you get up and dance, move around, all that stuff. But do protect your ears from talking to a lot of older people. It sucks not being able to hear when you're old. So protect those ears when you're at the concerts. All right, thank you very much.